Welcome to Immigration Unpacked, real legal help for immigrants.
Hello and welcome back to Immigration Unpacked, real legal help for immigrants with Kevin J. Stewart. Kevin is a dedicated immigration attorney committed to helping individuals and families across California and beyond. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is all about marriage-based green cards, one of the most common and most scrutinized immigration paths. We'll explore what USCIS really looks for when reviewing these applications, what it means to prove your marriage is bona fide, and some of the most common mistakes couples make along the way. Kevin, it's great to have you back. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Nice to see you.
All right, let's start with the basics here. How does the marriage-based green card process work, and who qualifies to apply?
For this discussion, we'll focus on U.S. citizens marrying foreign nationals. So there are some special benefits to being a U.S. citizen who's marrying a foreign national. And in this case, what we're talking about is someone who entered the U.S. Already and is lawfully present in the U.S., probably under a visa. And so what happens is once the marriage is completed and you have legal proof of that marriage, then you can proceed to file for the petition for an immigrant visa for the person, because that's immediately available, and that's Form I-130, and also Form I-485, which is what we call adjustment of status, and that's also what we call a concurrent filing. So I've given you a lot there, and I can break all of that down, but that's basically how the process works for marriage to a U.S. citizen.
What does the USCIS mean by a bona fide marriage? Why is that standard important?
So the main concern of USCIS, and this is something that people are familiar with from movies and from all sorts of sources, is that there is an idea out there that, hey, if I can marry a U.S. citizen, then I can get a green card. And so there is that incentive to basically go through the process of getting married and filing for the green card. So in that case, if someone were to do it that way, that would not be what we would consider a bona fide marriage, because it was done for the purpose of obtaining a green card, in that case, of obtaining a immigration benefit. So it basically, those are called sham marriages, and marriage fraud is like one of the worst things that you can be accused of in the system. So bona fide marriage means that you are marrying for honest reasons, with the intent to stay together as a married couple and do all the things that married couples do.
Yeah, definitely a movie trope, and because I think it's an easy one, right? It's an easy thing because there could be a lot of comedy there, especially leading into my next question. What is the evidence you need to prove that your marriage is bona fide and not just for immigration purposes?
Evidence that shows that you have a long-standing relationship. Sometimes people have been together for years. Let's say they're already living together. Their families know each other, friends know them. They have photos, that sort of thing. That's like basic. If you have that, then that's good evidence that the marriage is bona fide. Cohabitation is probably the most important thing. Mm-hmm. If you can live together, then you need to live together, because that's what they're looking for. There are situations where people can't live together. Somebody has a job that takes them in a different place. That can be overcome. It's just that you need to have good evidence of the reasons for not living together, and something to show that you plan to move in together at some point in the future. Other basic things: joint bank account, joint expenses, insurance, jointly held car titles. I've seen people who adopt pets together. These things, gym memberships together. Mm-hmm. It's like it runs the gamut. the only area where I've seen overkill in these evidentiary submissions is photos. You don't need 100 photos. You just
100
need
photos of you just hanging out and
yes, 100 photos of you together, and let your imagination run wild. There are what we call TMI photos of the
oh
couples
yes,
together.
yes.
So
Don't need to go that far with the
yeah,
imagination.
we really do. USCIS especially doesn't need that, and your attorney and paralegals don't need it either.
So what are some of the red flags that the US CIS that might trigger them to go, I'm not sure this is legit?
Yeah, age difference is probably one of the biggest ones. Anything over I don't want to be unfair to people about this, but if you're talking about 20 years difference, difference in culture that would be hard to get past, differences in religion, they look at these things, and provide reasons, to suspect your claim of bona fide marriage, not cohabiting like we talked about before. There are situations where USCIS does site visits, and if they show up at your home asking about both parties in the couple and somebody else in the household doesn't know the other person, that's a red flag.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
All right. So at the beginning of the show, you kind of talked about the process. Let's unpack the process a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the green card interview. What happened before that? There's a series of paperwork. Can you kind of just discuss that in a little more detail?
So one of the big advantages of marriage to a U.S. citizen is that you can file concurrently the petition, which is the sort of the part that really is focused on does the person qualify as an immediate relative? Does the person that you're marrying, the foreign national, do they qualify as an immediate relative? So spouse is like the best kind of immediate relative.
Yeah.
So that really only looks at that relationship, that I-130, and the bona fide marriage aspect, especially if it's less than 2 years that you've been married. So that part is actually kind of separate. You file them together, but it's sort of adjudicated separately. The green card process is, in this situation where both parties are in the U.S., you're filing what's called adjustment of status. And so that part goes a little bit more into what is the background of the foreign national. Are they eligible to adjust status, get a green card? Are there any issues in their background that might disqualify them, make them inadmissible, that kind of thing? So all of that is gone through in the process, which, it's really hard to say how long these take. We've had them complete in literally a month and a half, and we've had others that are pending for up to 2 years. So just no way to know.
That seems like a lot of stuff with immigration paperwork and whatnot, that it can go, it kind of runs the gamut as far as timing goes.
Yeah. It's very hard to predict.
Okay. So then there's an interview, a green card interview. What is your best advice to couples as far as preparing for that interview?
Sure. And I'll go back to one of these things that people are aware of, because they like to, in the sort of the public image of immigration, it's what's called a Stokes interview. And in a Stokes interview, you take one party, the petitioner, and you take the other party, the beneficiary, and you put them in different rooms, and you basically quiz them on what the likes and dislikes are of the person. It's sort of like a lie detector to see if it's a bona fide marriage.
It's like, what was that old show, The Dating Game or something like that, or the Love Connection or something like that? I think it's
90 Day Fiance. Or
I would think of an older game show where that was like they had to do that kind of stuff. But that's
was it Newlywed?
Newlywed Game. That's what it is.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
We're showing our age.
That's right, we are.
At least I am.
But I'm comfortable with that.
But so, I mean, the thing is that we don't see a lot of these. here on the West Coast. I've heard of them happening again. And I think what it is that if USCIS has sort of cues, things that are making them distrustful of the application, then they might do that. And let me just say, let's taking that out of the equation. So your best preparation is know all of your documentation, know your partner. Know, don't be surprised by questions like, how did you meet? I mean, you would be surprised. The average person would be surprised how that stumps some people, just because they hadn't thought about it. So, like, remember it. Remember your anniversary. Remember, guys, hey, she's been asking you to remember this for years. So
now you have to
get it together for this one situation. Okay. So yeah, things like that. And I'll tell you, it really depends on the officer that you get. Mm-hmm. And they're very hard to read. So one of the things I tell people is, don't be put off by an officer who's very abrupt, very direct, doesn't really ask that many questions. Those are sometimes the best ones because they're really just doing their job. They've gone through your file. They know what you've got. And they're just basically justifying an approval at that point. So you just kind of go with that. And it can be very positive, especially with couples that know each other well. And, there's no questions.
Does the process differ if a couple's already married versus, a couple that's engaged or planning to marry soon?
Oh yeah, no, great question. And this is it's actually a good subject maybe for a later video. So there is a separate process for fiancés, for people who are engaged. And that's the K-1 visa. It's completely different. We won't go into it here, but as long as you meet the person in person within the last 2 years before you file, and you can show that you're engaged, that you prove that you've met, you can file that petition for that type of visa. And then it just depends. Everything we've been talking about so far assumes that people are both in the U.S. There's another process we'll talk about where the person does what we call consular processing and comes in where they're already married. So that's not to take us off the track too much.
Okay. And I can't remember if you mentioned this or not, but there's something called conditional green cards, especially for marriages under 2 years old, correct?
Yeah. So if when your green card is approved, your marriage is less than 2 years old, you get what's called a conditional permanent residence, and that's reflected on the green card where your expiration is 2 years after your approval. And then 90 days before that expiration, you are able to file what we call the removal of conditions, and that's with the form I-751. And when that's done, you kind of present some of the same evidence you did when you first filed, but you update it. You update it with, photos of you more recently, same kind of bank accounts and shared expenses, that kind of thing.
I would imagine this can be pretty stressful for people because they're like, oh God, what kind of questions are they going to ask me? What do I have to prepare for? Are they going to believe us? Are they going to think that we're not married, even though we are? Our marriage is legitimate, blah, blah, blah. What kind of advice do you give to couples who feel that kind of nervous feeling about being believed, even when their marriage is completely legit?
Yeah, that's actually always the case, that people are nervous. And, like I was saying, you really shouldn't put too much into the interview. I mean, during COVID, we weren't having interviews for these cases, and just because they weren't doing a lot of in-person stuff. And now with the new administration, I think basically everybody gets interviewed, which was the case before COVID. So I would look at it as, hey, we have worked to get a very good file of information. We're ready. We have all our financials together. We have all of our bona fide evidence in place. The interview is just going to be a chance for us to show the officer that we have a bona fide marriage. Approach it that way instead of sort of waiting for, the gotcha question or whatever. Because honestly, even in a situation where somebody says, I really don't know what their favorite color is, you just say, I really don't know what their favorite color is. And as long as your partner doesn't say, I told you, then you should be okay.
You got me I think blue. Blue or green, I'm pretty sure my wife's favorite colors. I mean, that is a legitimate, that's true, because I mean, like, sometimes you can get hit with stuff where you're like, wait, what? Like, I'm trying to think if I know her sign. I don't know if I know her sign. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, So like, I guess you could be put on the spot,
Well, and yes, and that is the thing. People should not be worried about giving the wrong answer in that type of situation.
Okay.
It's not really that kind of thing. The thing to always keep in mind, it doesn't matter. I'll give you actually a really good example. Let's say the person's been here on a visitor visa, the spouse, and they worked, and you're not authorized to work. If they ask, have you ever worked on your while you were on your visitor visa during this time that you were applying, for this benefit? If you have worked, you have to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little confusing because during the process usually you apply for and you get a work permit. So, but if they're asking, like, if before did you ever do unauthorized work? You have to say yes. You have to always be honest about, because they'll know. They'll know. They may not know the details of that. You worked under the table, you did this or that. The worst thing you can do is say, oh no, I never did. And then it sort of comes out that yes, you did. That kind of thing can really go badly. You just have to be honest.
Be honest. I think that seems like a pretty good advice across the board, huh?
That's the main advice we give people in the whole process. And another really good thing to remember, if there's a change, if you answered a certain way on your application, and at the time of the interview, you want to make sure that that's corrected, they always go through your application and make corrections anyway. But it's a good idea if before things get started, you say, oh, I have this change to my application, and I want to let the officer know. If you have documentation you want to submit, it's good to just let them know going in.
Yeah, that sounds like I said, it sounds like just honesty and being thorough. Sounds like the best way to handle these. All right. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode of Immigration Unpacked, Real Legal Help for Immigrants with Kevin J. Stewart. If you're applying for a marriage-based green card or thinking about it, don't navigate it alone. Visit oaklandimmigrationlaw.com to schedule a consultation. Get the support you need. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. Kevin, always great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. See you soon.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.